could you please tell us your name? If you're not comfortable giving your name, you can use an alias, but go ahead.
My name is Emily.
Okay, Emily, where are you from and where do you live now?
Born and raised in Colorado. Have not really left there, so.
Okay, so now a pretty kind of liberal state, more progressive than most?
Yeah, it depends what county you're in. I live right on the line of two counties that are pretty opposing, so that gets really interesting.
Okay, but you live on the
Yeah.
conservative side.
I live on the more liberal side.
Okay, all right, that's
Yeah.
good. Okay. And what is your gender identity? If you don't have one, you can say I don't have one, but tell us what your gender identity, what you identify as.
I mean, I identify as female, but I feel like I am pretty androgynous in the way that I think about gender.
So you would
So,
say kind of what is it called? Fluid.
um, I'm pretty solid in female identity. I just think that a lot of traits that other people usually think of as like masculine or feminine, I just kind of think of as like.
I think a lot. I think I would say 100% of people have some kind of attributes of both that we consider both.
Right.
So it's just that's why this is called the spectrum, because it is a spectrum. Sex and gender are not absolute things, and a lot of people get that confused, and that's what the whole point of the show. Okay, so what are your preferred pronouns? Would you be considered she, her?
Yeah. It'd go by she, her.
And what is your so-called like biological sex as you were born?
Female.
Okay. And do you, the best of your knowledge, do you have anything that would be considered intersex, like any kind of chromosomal differences or anything like that?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay, cool. And what is your sexual orientation?
I would consider myself asexual.
Okay, you're asexual. And what, since you're asexual, I got a whole list of questions we'll go through. So you are female, born, designated as female, a woman at birth, and you're asexual. So, okay. So since you are asexual, let me go to this list and we'll try to get through them real quick. Have you ever had a real sexual response to another, like a physical response, like arousal or anything like that, that you would, that you know of? If you don't, it would be hard to define to yourself what it would be because you wouldn't know what it is. And if so, what gender or sex were the people that you were aroused by?
I know physiologically what it feels like, but it's never really been in response to another person.
Okay, so you have had that physical. Okay, so you still have it. It's just not connected to bodies and faces.
Exactly. And that's what the attraction part is. Most people that are asexual, and of course it's an umbrella term and all of that, they don't experience sexual attraction to a gender. So it might still be under specific situations or things like that. But in general, like it's not really geared towards anybody.
So when you watch like a movie on TV and there's a nude scene, nothing.
Not really. I think of it really logistically. I'm just like, that looks like that would be really tiring. I don't. That looks uncomfortable. Right. So I think of it very, very practically, personally.
Okay.
So
like you're supposed to do this to make babies, not for fun. No, I didn't mean.
Yeah, I'm like, right. It's like it's. I can see why other people think it would be fun, but for me, it's not worth the effort.
It's like with like eating. You eat because you know you have to live, but that's not the reason you eat. You kind of get hungry, but sometimes you don't have that hunger. Okay, so you answer the next question. Have you ever just had physical arousal, like okay, so you do have that. It's not okay. Are you neutral to the idea of sexual activity? Some are like grossed out by it. Some are just neutral. Some are pro, like they kind of have like a affinity for it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's fine.
It's neutral.
It's just there. Yeah.
Do you have any general repulsion to touching, not in a sexual way, but do you have a general repulsion to touching people at all, like hugging or kissing, or in a non-sexual way?
Um, no, not really. I'm generally a fan of physical affection as long as it's consensual, obviously. So that's yeah.
Okay. And do you have, and I think we talked about this, do you have any romantic feelings towards other people? If so, to which gender? Also, if so, how do you know if these feelings are romantic and not simply platonic in nature?
Um, I I'm heteromantic, which is the opposite gender. I have romantic feelings. I'm actually married. Me and my spouse have been together for almost 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and that's of course a whole big other misconception about people who are asexual. But I I've talked about it a lot with people I'm comfortable with and read a lot. The main way that I found out that I was definitely asexual was online forums and other people sharing their experiences that are similar to mine. So, it's mostly basing it off of other people's experiences and how they talk about it. So for me, when I say I identify as, it's because it's like, well, for me, these labels make the most sense for me. Um, yeah, I just know it's different from platonic, I guess.
Okay.
I don't
Like,
know. It's kind of hard to.
you yearn to be like, to hug your spot, to be with, like, maybe not sexual, but you yearn to like go to dinner and have a, good romantic relationship.
Well, yeah, yeah. I guess the thing for me with him is that I really crave that connection, that emotional connect. I can tell him anything, um, anytime. I want to be physically affectionate with him. I want to be close to him and do things with him. Um, and yeah, it is just different from platonic.
Okay, I got you. So yeah, I mean, you can tell when you go up and give somebody a handshake, and then when you go up and give somebody you're romantically attracted to, like a, like more of affectionate touch.
Hmm.
Okay, neat. You're the first person ever to tell me that. Okay. Okay, so have you ever had sex of any kind in any form? If so, which gender?
Um, yeah, just him.
Okay.
He's
So you
the
have,
only one.
okay,
Yeah,
so you are not gender repulsed. You're not sex repulsed. Some people are sex repulsed. The idea of having
right.
sex is off the table for them. Okay, gotcha. Do you have any kids, by the way?
I do not.
Okay. Are you trying in the future or thinking about it?
Um, we're thinking about it right now. We live with his in-laws, and I don't want them to have to deal with that. So I'd
Okay,
like us to get our own place first.
gotcha. That's
Yeah.
understandable. Have you ever felt pressured or obligated to have sex with anybody?
No, no,
No.
luckily.
Okay.
I know that it's not a lot of people's experience, but yeah.
This one's like I'll read the last one first on this page. Have you ever had a crush on somebody? Have you ever fallen in love with anybody?
Yeah, so I got my first crush when I was in middle school. And then consistently had crushes on boys in high school, and they probably know who they are. And if you're one of them, I'm so sorry. If you see this.
I'm sure they didn't mind. I'm sure they liked the attention. You're a pretty girl, so I'm sure they um okay, so you
Yeah.
have had crushes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you see somebody from across the room and little hearts start floating up.
Yes, that's exactly, you can see them.
That is so
Um,
amazing, but it's not, it's the crush part. the romantic part, but it's not the sexual part. There's no real sexual component to it. That is,
well, yeah, and that's what for me was confusing growing up, is because I would talk with other people who would have crushes, and I just assumed that when they said I have a crush, I'm like, oh, you just want to like hold hands with them and
yeah.
ask them about their family, like meet their family and talk about this stuff. And then they're like, oh no, there's other things. And I'm like, wait, what? I don't think about those other
All
things.
right, so that's where you, well,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
like, oh,
because well, like when you're 6 and 7 or 8, you have crushes, and then you're not at that age, you're not developed for the sex part. You're thinking, oh, this is normal, and then you get to the sex part, and you're like, what the hell are people doing? I
yeah,
am
I'm
not.
like, oh, that's okay.
Whatever floats your boat. This one's pretty personal and slightly explicit. I don't want this to be for a younger audience, but have you ever self-indulged in any sexual activity? I don't want to use that word. And if so, have you thought about another person doing it? And if not, what do you think about? Have you ever done that before?
Um,
And you
I
don't have to, if it's a very personal question, you don't have to answer it. I'm
no,
just,
I am an open book with this sort of thing.
okay.
Um, I usually am just focusing on, I guess, the sensation, never anything specific. So, and it's not something I do very often either. Um, for some, I've talked to a couple of other people who are asexual, and they say when they get aroused, it's almost kind of annoying. It's like, oh, we're doing this again. Like, so sometimes it's
That's
like
the way
you
it is
have
for
to do that
everybody,
to
I
get rid of the
promise you.
feeling.
Even sexual people get that same, like, oh God, not this again.
Yeah,
To take,
yeah. So
in general,
for me,
most
it's almost
like women in general don't do it as much as men. I mean, that's a generalization, but it's a pretty good generalization. But also, you know, that's interesting. So you don't think of anybody. You don't have anybody in mind like a fantasy. It's just a purely physical thing that you do because it's annoying the hell out of you sometimes. I'm, you know,
pretty much.
okay.
I'm not gonna. It's again not to be too explicit. Like it feels good, of course, but yeah, it's just to kind of get rid of that sensation and then go on with
That
my
is
life.
just so interesting to me. Oh my gosh. Because I get it, because you still have that physical thing, but it's not a attached to people, right?
Mm.
Have
Yeah,
you ever don't want to get too explicit, have you ever gone all the way? Like I mean, have you ever done it and it you had the climax? That's what I'm saying.
right. Yeah, and yeah,
No, you haven't.
again, it's fine. It's
Okay, okay. All right, let's leave it at that.
yeah,
I know those are personal questions. They're just very interesting.
yeah, and I mean it is part of understanding asexuality. So
So like not to sidetrack, but there's like a part of the brain that obviously judges people's visual, like their shape and form and their beauty, and that part is attached in some way to the sexual response in most people, but some people it's just not. That's what I mean. I can't confirm. That's conjecture, of course. That's just my hypothesis on it. It has to do something with that. That's very interesting. You're the
oh,
first person that's ever told me a couple of these things. So that's why I'm liking this show. Because I've had the last two told me new things I never heard about before. So, I'm a gay man. I like men. I always have since I was a kid. So, there's such a variety. I used to think, oh, it's just gay or straight. And no, not even close. There's like a whole variety in between. Okay, so let's get a little bit more about your background and how you dealt with this. At what age did you begin to notice that something was different about you?
I guess probably high school, college. I actually had a lot of friends in high school who were um, all over. Like one of them was bi, two of my friends that were girls were going out, one of them was gay, and so I had exposure to those different ideas, but I never had exposure to anybody who is asexual. So for me, I was like, oh, everybody feels the same way that I do. You know, I was really focused on school and extracurriculars and stuff. So I just assumed that that's, you know, how everybody else was. Of course, we all only have our own frame of reference.
Sure.
Um, and then in college, again, it was just sort of like people are talking a lot about having sex and how it's hard not to have sex. And I'm like, it's not hard for me, but yeah. So that was just
Just
the
don't
piece in
get
my
it.
mind where I was,
You just didn't
yeah.
get
And
why.
I also, there's a piece of it too that's a little weird. I grew up as a Christian and I went to a private Christian college.
Oh,
And so, you know, it was like a dry campus. We couldn't drink, of course. Like there were certain times where the opposite gender couldn't be in the room, that sort of thing. And so, you know, there weren't even a lot of discussions in general about sex. So I always had the feeling that there was something a little different, but I never really got a chance to discuss it until I was an adult.
okay. So the next question would be, at what age did you finally realize that you had this identity, this asex, that you were asex?
I came out as ace last year, so I was 26.
Very recent. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I
okay, so that was the question. Did you ever come out to your family and friends or to anyone else? And if so, how did they react?
I I mean, I haven't said it in person, but I'm pretty open about it on Facebook and I have a lot of people
Okay,
on
so,
Facebook
so
that
you
know
have
me
friends and
personally.
family on Facebook that, oh, wait, no,
Yeah,
you wouldn't
I
because
mean,
they're private groups, or you do it on your Facebook
no,
own
I
page.
do it on my wall.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm part of a couple of groups on Facebook that are for asexual people, but um, yeah, last year I posted something about it. I think there was like, I think it was asexual like visibility week or something like that. And I posted something about it and I was like, if you have any questions, blah, blah, blah. And people in the comments were really respectful. Um, I have a feeling that some people had not nice things to say, but they either didn't or they didn't know enough about asexuality to be like, I don't even know how to respond to this, so it's fine. I'll just leave it.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, I think some people just don't, they can't comprehend it outside of their world of like perfect man and perfect woman, and man is this and woman is this. It's just not, it's like a dichotomy, but it's a fake it's like not, it's a fake universal. It just seems universal, but it's not, there's no really universal truth to it. Okay. So have you ever tried to resist your asex, and have you ever pretended to be what other people think was normal? Did you ever pretend like you were, sexually into guys or something? Or did you just say, no, I'm not, you know?
um I mean, there were times when I was dating my now husband where I was like, I feel like I should be more into this, so I'm gonna go along with it. And, you know, he and I would talk afterwards about how it felt, and um, a lot of that discussion helped me work through it. I think in our society, we just don't talk about sex enough in general. So I think that's one of the reasons it took me a while to figure out what was going on. Um, But yeah, I mean, I'm generally, especially once I got into college, I stopped kind of trying to pretend to be something I wasn't. And I was like, yeah, I mean, they're pretty. I can acknowledge when people look attractive,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah,
about, yeah.
yeah.
So
I think that might be one of the confusing people because I think I've never met anybody that didn't have like a jet, like, oh, he's good looking or she's pretty or something like. I've never met anybody that didn't have that kind of response. I think for some people it's so confusing if they don't have other responses like romantic feelings or crushes or sexual responses. I think that might be the most confusing thing to grow up with, except maybe being trans. That would be pretty rough too. I don't know that which one would be harder. Well, I mean, in today's society, probably being trans is what they're trying to do to trans people is sickening. I think in like those conservative states. But anyway, that's a different
Well,
topic.
I'm like, I'll let you ask your questions.
Okay. All right. Have your parents or any other influence tried to force you to be normal? Normal, and I say normal in quotes.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I was just thinking about when you're saying if it's harder to be trans or not. For me, it's really easy. I'm passing. So, what I mean by that is I'm married to a man. I'm a woman. My relationship comes off as very standard, and so it's I don't have to do a lot of like hiding, I guess.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah, good
yeah,
point.
yeah. So, I mean, and I dated somebody in high school for a few months, and then I dated my now husband, and then we got married. So I haven't dated a whole lot, but my parents were never really worried at all about me not being interested in dating. They just saw it, I think, the same way as I did, where it was like I'm just really wrapped up and invested in school. So they never really tried to change that.
Okay, cool. And nobody else has tried to say, hey, you're not normal, do this, do that. You haven't had that response from anybody.
Not in regards to my asexuality, no.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Fair enough. What was your hardest moment accepting or coming to terms with your asex? Did you
Um,
have a moment that was just really hard for you?
right. I guess not a moment, but I guess the realization that I was an asexual person married to a very not asexual person.
Okay.
And I felt like, and I mean, my husband is amazing. We've talked about this all the time. I feel comfortable talking with him about it. Um, but I felt bad because I was like, I never feel like having sex. I never bring it
Did
up.
you
I don't
feel like
care
that
about it.
you couldn't give him something that he wanted and you felt bad that you couldn't give him that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's like I could, like I said, I'm pretty neutral when it comes to sex. So I'm like, I mean, if I guess, if he wanted to, it'd be like, sure, whatever, that's fine. But I never felt like that was almost like fair to him. Um, and I think that's just a way that, again, that's a whole nother thing for about like societal expectations and marriage and sex and that sort of thing. Um, but we worked through that together.
Cool. I mean, that's nice that you have somebody that's understanding like that. Not many people would be like that. It really is. Okay. And have you ever considered and or attempted suicide based on being asex? Okay. Do you have a support group, friends and family who accept you fully?
Yeah, I mean, obviously my husband, if that wasn't clear.
Yeah, of course.
Um, I have a couple of friends, some people online, like I said, there's a couple of Facebook groups. There's been a Discord that I've joined with like some other people from Colorado who are also ace. So it's nice to have something local. Um, and then I do have a few friends who are close to me in real life who I can talk to.
Okay. Have you ever sat down with your parents and tried to explain it to them? Or is that just, it's okay, just leave it alone?
Yeah, my parents and I think very differently about a lot of different things. And so it would just that's something that it's really personal, so it's not necessarily important for me to make sure that they understand it because I'm like, well, that's who I'm going to be anyway. So if you do or don't understand it, that's still a
Okay.
part of me. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Have you ever been The victim of sexual harassment, assault, or rape.
I have been sexually harassed before, but that's the extent of it.
Yeah, that needs to stop. You know, they say men are pigs, and we kind of are. So that's not an excuse, but it's just, that's the way we are. That's not really the way I am, at least anymore.
No, I know what you mean. It's again society.
Okay, so while you enter the second last question about you have a romantic and sexual partner, you have a husband. So um, the final question, two of them. What message would you like to give to the people who say you chose this lifestyle, who say that you're morally wrong, and that if you wanted to, you could change it, and you're just mentally ill and you need some help? What would you say to those people?
Um, okay. I sure. Oh, I don't know. Okay. I'm not gonna lie, obviously I would be kind of upset,
Of
but
course.
I think this sort of thing really comes out of a really big lack of understanding. And I understand again that a lot of it is in society. We don't talk a lot about sex, about the different components like libido and arousal and things like that, and attraction. Um, and so for people to be confused about it, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And sometimes when people are confused, they default back to what they're comfortable with. So they might just dismiss it. Um, and that's, one of the reasons I wanted to do this is to talk about my experience and share it so that people can have a better understanding of what asexuality is, even if they don't understand it themselves, but just that it exists and there are people that are different.
Think maybe until last couple of weeks, I think it was a couple weeks ago, I actually talked to my first uh, person who's asex. I mean, I've always thought like, that's so weird. I can understand it. Like some people don't have sexual attraction at all. Now I'm understanding how this all works. It's and it's like you said, it's an umbrella. There are different
Mm-hmm.
specimens, species, different varieties of this whole asex thing. But I had never met one until just a couple weeks ago, until I started talking online. It's very amazing. I've met millions of drag queens, a couple transgender, I've met all kinds, but and of course lots of lesbians. I had a lot of great lesbian friends. I'm going on. So what the final question is, what message would you like to give to all the kids and adults who are struggling with their identity and orientation and etc.? What message would you like to tell them?
Oh, that's a tough one. Find the people who validate and affirm who you are and stay away from the ones that are trying to tell you that they know you better than you know you.
That's a good response. Well said.
Well, yeah.
And that's probably what your tactic was.
Yeah. Well, and I'm getting my master's for school counseling. So
Oh, no kidding.
yeah, so I'm going to be around a lot of kids and young adults. Um, and I've learned a lot about that, like how important a good support system is in general, but especially when it comes to your identity.
Okay. This is a great interview. We're about, I think we cut it at about 30 minutes. So Emily, nice to meet you. And everybody, leave a comment or respond. And I hope you guys enjoyed her story. This is great. Bye for now.
Mhm.